I have 6 o'clock, and I call the December 1st, 2025 Person County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. I do recognize we have a quorum. At this time, Vice Chairman Thomas, will you lead us in our invocation?
Let us pray. Our most kind and dear Heavenly Father, we thank you tonight for this opportunity. God, we want to thank you for our health. We want to thank you for watching over us today and giving us the strength to be here tonight. God, we ask you to be with all our soldiers that are overseas that are watching over us and taking care of us. God, be with all our first responders, our police, our EMS, our fire department, our sheriff's department. Be with all those that answer the call when the need is there. God, give them the wisdom when they get to the call to answer it and have the wisdom and strength and courage to do what's needed. God, we ask you just to be with this board tonight. Be with us and direct us as you would want us to lead this county, God. God, we ask you just to forgive us all our sins. We thank you for giving your Son to die on the cross so we may have eternal life. And we just ask you to watch over us, forgive us of all our sins. In your heavenly name I do pray. Amen.
Commissioner Roycer, will you lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance?
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4, organization of the board. At this time, I relinquish my chairmanship of this board and hand the gavel over to the county attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Purrier. As we do every year, the first task of this board is to select your chairman. I would ask for nominations for chairman for the 2026 year.
Mr. Attorney, I nominate Kyle Purrier to continue in the chairmanship.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Wilburn. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I would ask for a vote at this time. All in the affirmative, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, congratulations.
Thank you. All right. At this time, we'll move into nominations for vice chair. Do I have any such nominations?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Sherry Wilburn.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a nomination for Commissioner Wilburn. Is there any other nominations? All right, having hearing none, please vote all in favor for Commissioner Wilburn as the vice chairman. Please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, Miss Vice Chairwoman. Thank you. And I believe that's the first in the history of Person County.
Sure. And Chairman, if I'll ask if Mr. Thomas would please relinquish his seat to Ms. Wilburn and swap seats, please.
All right, before we move on to the agenda, we have item number 5, approval of the bonds. Mr. County Attorney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is required by statute that annually our board approves statutorily set bonds for the positions of sheriff, finance director, register of deeds, and tax administrator. And those bonds are in the amount of $25,000 for the sheriff, $50,000 for the register of deeds, $100,000 for the tax administrator, and $1 million for the finance director. If it is the pleasure of the board, you may approve all 4 bonds in a single motion, Mr. Chair.
What is the pleasure of the board?
So moved.
Motion to approve all bonds. Any further discussion? Having hearing none, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The motion's been approved. Before we go into the agenda, I would like to thank the board for the confidence in allowing me to continue to serve in capacity as chairman, and I want to thank Vice Chairman Thomas for his leadership this past year and serving as the vice chairman as well. And again, congratulations, Vice Chairman Weber. All right. Item number 6, approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion, adjustment of said agenda? Having hearing none, all in favor of the agenda, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The agenda's been approved. Item 7A, public hearing, RZ-02-25, rezoning request from Chris and Brian Hicks to rezone 6.62 acres in 6 different parcels near the intersection of Jim Thorpe Highway and Virgilina Road from residential R to highway business B1, tax map and parcel 72-22, 72-43, 72-44, 72-45, 73-36, and 73-69. Do I have a motion to go into the public hearing?
So moved.
We have a motion. All in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. We're now in the public hearing.
And, Mr. Chair, if I could, before Mr. Trivedi starts, this is a little unusual. The board will remember, this actually came before you as a public hearing in November. It's back before you now because after you had voted to rezone part of the property, it came to our attention that there was a typographical error in the notice that the applicants received. It said the meeting started at 7. Of course, it started at 6. And after looking into this, the county staff provided them an option. They could either simply accept the rezoning as they've been approved and move on, or they could seek a new public hearing before this board. There's no need for a new public hearing before the planning board because apparently there were no issues with the notice given. The applicants have opted for a new hearing. So at this time, after the public hearing is concluded, the board is free to approve the rezoning as requested, deny it, or approve some portion of it as you did last time. And the previous decision has no binding impact on you at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Planning Director?
And thank you very much for this opportunity. Again, this is a brief presentation on this request and seek your action. The area in question is at the intersection of US 501 and NC 49. The 6 parcels are highlighted in front of you in blue in your packet. As you mentioned earlier, the tax parcel numbers. It is currently zoned residential with some of the parcels around it being B1 commercial in the area. One of them is split zone with majority of it being B1. The area in question is also within the growth area right outside Roxborough. It is part of that growth area seeking rezoning to B1. The applicant is here and present with you if you have any questions, concerns we go over this request.
All right. Any questions for the Planning Director? Any questions for the applicant?
I do have questions for the applicant.
Okay.
Can you come to the podium so that my...
Yep.
Can we have the map of the area back from the presentation? Okay, thank you, that's good. So I grew up, I lived part of the time on Providence Road as a young person, and it's still hard for me to remember what that used to look like.
Yeah, took me a while to get used to it too.
Yeah. Were all these parcels contiguous before Jim Thorpe Highway came through?
Yeah, when Jim Thorpe Highway came through, it split up all those parcels, and I had it resurveyed, and it is as you see it now, so that we could. There were parcels that actually stretched across the road before, but we got all that realigned, and we're ready to get it rezoned and move forward with the planning board has established to be future use of this property.
So I know there's one parcel that you own that's not outlined on the west side because it's already zoned B1, so we're not asking to rezone that one. Right, thank you. And so, and then on the east side, your request is to correct some split zoning of one parcel. So what's the history of that, of how you
There
got
was
the
a
split
business
zoning?
on this property years ago, and it was rezoned to business. That's why shaped the way it is and extending out into the road. When we had it resurveyed, we tried to keep that as the same as we possibly could. My brother owns the most southern plot there on his own. The rest of them we own together.
Okay, so I rode out there to the part on the east side, and it looks
Mhm.
like there's 3 residential structures on there?
Yes, there is currently 3 residential structures there.
So if you rezoned all of that to business, would it be your intent to remove those, or how would you change the use?
I don't have any intent to remove them now. We have been entertaining proposals from businesses, and the ones that we have talked to had an interest in using the structures in their business. So we have no intent on removing those at this time.
Okay, so they would be businesses that would be of the nature that could operate out of
Yeah.
that type of structure?
Yeah, they were gonna use it as a gift shop, part of it. Unfortunately, that fell through because they couldn't wait another 30 days, but we would still like to continue to entertain businesses for this location.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And now I do have a question for Nish. Would rezoning those parcels that have residential structures on them bring them?
No, the rezoning is just simply the use, what would be a potential future use for the properties. I mean, what the construction and all that would go through building inspection and building permit, to all those changes to the physical structures themselves would be later.
So
This is just for the use right now.
wouldn't make them out of compliance?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? All right. Madam Clerk, how many do we have sign up in favor and against?
We had one in favor of, that was the applicant, Mr. Hicks, we just heard from, and we have 2 in opposition.
Okay.
The first one is Reverend Raymond Wooten.
Hello again. Good evening to each and every one. As we were here before discussing this, and I will reiterate that we had no opposition to the businesses on the west side of the Jim Thorpe Highway, Highway 501. What we are concerned about is the land that is right there near our church, right there on Providence Baptist Church Cemetery Road. We have a number of concerns. One of the biggest being that there is no decision. We've not been able to be told what they're going to put there, and you can't unring a bell. Once you zone it for that, they can do whatever they want to there. We would like a little clarification as to what the plans are for the land. We would hate to see somebody come in and put something like a sweepstake shop there, or any of a number of businesses that would be unsavory there in our community. So that is one concern that we have. We've been told that it could be anything from a day spa / massage to a landscape supply company. So, and all things in between. So there's no clarification there as to what is planned for this land. The landscape supply company raises the concern of contamination, chemical contamination. If they have chemicals stored on site, as I said before, there's creeks on both sides. They're on top of the hill, and the creeks go down, the runoff can go down into these creeks. And I will tell you now, I live about 500 yards through the woods from this location. Bit of history there, I currently have a rental house on Halifax Road that I'm on city water with because of contamination from GMH Electronics. A permit was granted to them to open that business up many years ago. They dumped benzene and everything else behind the building, and it got into the groundwater. So now I'm paying a water bill where I did have a jet pump in my well. My well is no longer any good. It's filled up with concrete. So those are concerns of ours. And for the church itself, we're looking at the problem of traffic. We currently are having people coming through our churchyard. They're driving through the churchyard now. And since our last appearance here at the board back in November, we actually had a utility bucket truck go through our churchyard and around the building and up and then drive into 549. The intersection there at Providence Church Cemetery Road is dangerous. That's one good thing that came about. I grew up on Providence Road as well. And that was one good thing that came about when they rerouted the road, was the fact that that intersection was taken out, because we used to go through Longhurst or down Thaxton Road to avoid going out that intersection because it was so dangerous. Now it's no different. We thought when they built the new highway that they would go in there and cut down that knoll so that people could see. You cannot see. If you're in a regular passenger car and you're trying to go into that intersection, as I tell people, I say a little prayer and give it the gas, because you just don't have any idea what's going to pop over that hill. People don't do 45 through there, I can tell you that now. They come through there anywhere from 55 to 65. And when they come over that hill, you have no reaction time. That road, if we had history on it through DOT or some of our state organizations, I would love to know just how many wrecks have been there over the last 50 years in that one intersection from people coming through there. But the other concern is that when people going through our churchyard, our church building is one place and our playground is on the other side of that driveway. What's going to happen if we have children out there? Somebody comes flying through there and runs over several children. We can't gate our cemetery because people that own plots there that have loved ones buried there, they have to be able to get in there to visit the graves of their loved ones. And so if we go in there and we put gates up to stop it, we're just cutting off our nose to spite our face. It's not a good situation. Not only that, but whatever goes there, if it's zoned for business and you got 18-wheelers coming through there, our cemetery road is not made to handle these heavy-weighted vehicles. It's just a thin layer of asphalt. I'm not a civil engineer, so I couldn't tell you what the weight classification is there, but it's not made for these big trucks and stuff to be going through there. People come through there, they cut through there right now because they want to avoid that intersection. They want to avoid it and be able to get into 49 and go. But it is a dangerous intersection, and we would love to see it. We've got signs posted, dead end road. We've got signs posted, private road, and people ignore it and just go on by. One thing that we are concerned about, when they built this road, we were told that they were not going to allow any commercialization along this road. Now all of a sudden, we're getting requests to zone for businesses. Now, what happened there? It was zoned, we were told no commercialization, no business would be built. Now all of a sudden, they're asking for permission to build businesses. So, we have a number of concerns there. Another thing is what happens if this land goes up for sale and is zoned for business. It's out of Chris's hands. I think Chris would be an ethical man. But what happens if he sells that land to the first one that comes along and flashes a little money to him? What are we going to have there then? It's just so many questions and no answers that we're getting from this. And that's our biggest concern. We would love to have some answers as to what's going to go there, how it's going to go. As I said, we oppose nothing on the west side of the road. They can do what they want to, what they need to with that. But our biggest concern is that right there in the side yard of our church and joining our church property and the traffic that it would generate if there is a business put in there. Those are questions that need to be answered before anything can go forth from this point on. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker we have is Herman Gentry.
Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. I'm one of the trustees for Providence Baptist Church. I am here representing the church. Providence Baptist Church was established in 1857, and over the many years, We have served the citizens of Providence community and citizens throughout Person County. And we've served them in many ways and hope to continue to serve in many ways and expand this. As been said, we have no objection to the Hicks development on the west side of Jim Thorpe Highway, but we strongly oppose and will fight any commercial zoning on the east side. Much of this property lies within the right-of-way of US 501. Much of it lies within the right-of-way of Highway 49. Much of it lies within the right-of-way of Providence Church Road, Providence Cemetery Road, which is a dead-end road. Vehicles do not have room to turn around, so they are looking for routes through our cemetery. And it won't take them long to tear it all to pieces. I hate that we have to maybe fortify the cemetery in the future to keep people out. Highway 49 has a lot of traffic. There's a lot of Richmond traffic that passes along 49 in both directions. Highway 49 was the first choice to locate Interstate 85. It was going to follow 49. It was the shortest route from Richmond to Charlotte. However, a slick politician in Granville County talked our representatives in Raleigh into letting it come through the edge of Granville County. So it didn't follow 49. And you missed out on any commercial development that it might have brought to the city of Roxborough and the county of Person because of our representatives. And I'll never forgive them for doing that. There's no legal access to this property to access 501. And Providence Cemetery Road is a dead-end road. And people going through our cemetery pass through our playground area where children are often playing. And other activities are conducted there in the northernmost part of our property. As stated previously, exiting Providence Cemetery Road into 49 is very dangerous. If you look at your maps, you'll see that intersection has Broad Road directly across the street from it. It has the intersection of 501 splitting off, allowing 49 to come that way. Just a short, very short distance, only a short number of feet from this intersection. You also have a busy convenience store there on the corner of Virgilina Road and Providence Cemetery Road. And a lot of traffic comes out of that. And there's a big danger of accidents there with vehicles, plus the traffic on 49. They're the main things I want to say. I'm going to keep it short.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, that's all the individuals that are signed up tonight.
Mr. Hicks will speak in favor, or would that, his comments?
Mr. Hicks, you did sign up for the speak in favor. Do you have any additional comments?
Yeah, I appreciate all the comments from the church. And, I rode around in this county after the planning meeting, and there's lots of cemeteries, lots of churches in this county, and I appreciate every one of them. But places like Personal Memorial Cemetery, Birchwood Cemetery, and multiple churches in Roxborough and around Roxborough, all have businesses adjacent to them. They all have to contend with having business properties located in and around them. And, you know, this is a good community, and we've always been able to work in harmony, you know, with residential and businesses being intertwined. You know, I know there's concerns about people driving through the cemetery, but that's already a concern. People fly up that road every day, because I've been staying there some, and I see them go in and out of the cemetery on Providence Cemetery Lane all the time. The cemetery has multiple roads. You don't have to exit to get out of the cemetery next to the church. You can exit on one of the other cemetery roads that are there. So, you know, if it's a huge concern, you know, the end where you exit through the church could be blocked off. And if people come in on that side, they'll be forced to leave on that side, and vice versa. You know, if they come in on the church side, you know, they could be blocked in such a way that they would have to exit on the church side. And that would make it a true dead end if something like that could be put in. You know, if a business comes there with a lot of traffic, you know, the store right across the road, there's already a lot of traffic coming in and out of the store. You know, the DOT is in charge of that kind of thing, and if there's excess traffic going through that area, then we would have to contact the DOT and ask them to make adjustments to the road, put extra lanes of traffic, make it safer, things of that nature. And as far as water contamination, I know that GMH contaminated the water years ago, but they are truly at the top of the hill there, and that water ran down through to those residences, like where Mr. Herman's rental is, and contaminated the water there. I don't, as looking at the topographical map of this area, I don't see that issue happening on this particular property. All the runoff would actually not go toward the church, it would go the other way. So, you know, that's some of the things that I noticed since the last planning meeting, where some of this stuff was brought up. But I'd be glad to keep the church in the loop on what's going on with the property. We would like to continue to put the property up for a business lease, or maybe even a business sale if we can find an appropriate offer. And that's about all I can say for now. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. All right, members of the board, that concludes our comments. Do I have a motion to come out of the public hearing?
So moved.
Have a motion? Any further discussion? Having hearing none. All in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. We're out of the public hearing. What is the desire of the board?
I'd like to ask planning director a question. Can you still do that now, or have we passed that?
Yes.
Okay, on retail sales, what could not be permitted under the retail sales that would be allowed if it was changed?
Please keep in mind, we did change the planned use table at the last meeting when the use table was, all the retail sales was consolidated into one retail sales indoor and outdoor. The land use table has been updated. What would not be allowed in B1 is anything that doesn't have an X or a special use permit exemption within the new land use table for B1.
So I've had some questions asked, and I really couldn't look at that and tell. So if it was changed and retail sales are allowed, could a business of sexual explicit nature be allowed?
I think that's a separate listing in the table, and it's also in a separate ordinance.
see where eating and drinking facilities would be, an
Yeah.
event center would be, light industrial would be.
I don't see it even listed on the
I
land
didn't
use
see where it
table.
said it couldn't. That was a question
That
that
is
was
a
asked.
separate ordinance.
to
if
me.
I
It's
can
a
stop
separate
on that.
ordinance, it's in a separate ordinance
it?
called the, ordinance for special, necessary use businesses and stuff like that. We would work on trying to consolidate into here. Right now, it's not listed on the land use table. That is an update we would need to do. Right now, it would not be because it's not in the land use table.
Okay. Mr.
It'd be,
Chairman,
I'd have to go back to look at the separate ordinance to see if it's even permitted in B one.
I'd like to revisit the last discussion and, so in the last meeting, I made a motion to approve it as it was presented, as the planning board approved it, as the staff recommended, based on this being intersections on a major highway, predominantly, as you would see, business zoning. It would correct split zoning. Part of it is already B1 on both sides. And to what the pastor was saying, I'm sorry I didn't get his name, but about the, commercial uses, what I think he was referring to is it being a restricted access highway. And so that would prevent a lot of commercial development with turns off of it and slow down the traffic.
On US
But
501.
with this being, at an intersection, it would not slow down the traffic. You could have the commercial development without the changing the restricted access feature of that highway. But there was not support for it, and so Commissioner Long made a different motion, a substitute motion, to approve what was on the west side. There was no opposition that night or tonight for what was on the west side. And so if that is, still kind of the consensus of the board, I would still like to see us fix that split zoning on the east side for that one parcel, because that's could be, I guess, a compliance issue. If somebody wanted to use that entire parcel for it being predominantly already zoned B1. I don't know if anybody
And-
would be helped to look at the map again to see what I'm referring to. It's a small portion of one parcel that's not zoned like the rest of it.
There's 3 B1 parcels within the same area. The split zone, one that you see on the right, the one in the corner on the left, on the west, and then the one across the street on 49, also B1, the red one you see in the bottom right corner. And access to 501 would be restricted to what DOT would permit through their driveway permit process. The DOT would be the ones regulating the use, access along 501
Right.
and 49.
Right, the DOT would be the one approving access to any of it. Right, there'd have to be a permit.
That would be a
for
separate
that
process.
as
They'd have to
well.
go through a DOT.
Right.
Board members?
My vote hasn't changed. The initial one that we did the last meeting with approving the partial instead of the whole. So,
Would you be open to correcting that split parcel? You see it's got like a little, I don't know, elbow sticking out.
And that elbow is at the intersection of 501 and 49.
See right there? So this is one parcel and most of it's B1 except that little back corner.
The chairman will entertain a motion at this time.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the rezoning to B1 for the parcels west of Jim Thorpe Highway and to correct the split zoning for parcels 7369
And the correction would be to B1.
to B1.
And so you'd be changing the entire parcel to be B1?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask a question?
No, sir, we can't have any comments from the audience at this time. I don't fully understand changing that one portion of, to, right there, the little L.
Because right now that that would be allowed for residential in that area and commercial in the same parcel.
So that's one parcel. So if they sold that one parcel, or if they decided to do something with that one and sold these two, whatever, if they wanted to have a business use right there and, you know, continue it onto that portion of the property, they couldn't. So
They
that
could
would
only
be
use that piece as a residential
compliance
area,
issue
yeah.
for planning and zoning, because, you know, most of the property is B1, and that's, so the church property's over here, away from that corner, right? So that's not the part that's affecting that side.
All right. We have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion?
I just wanna make sure I understand. So, as I stated, what we voted for before, what we approved before, that's where I stand.
All right, so that would entertain a substitute motion
Yes.
to revert back to just the properties on the west side.
Yes.
Okay.
And that would still already, that would leave this as B1, it's already B1, it wouldn't change that part, that could
Right.
still be used for business purposes. They just would have the part of their property would be B1 and part would be residential.
Yeah, east of 501 would be unchanged.
It doesn't revert that back to residential use. We can't do that legally.
No.
That's what I was gonna say. I was just agreeing with you, Commissioner, that changing that B1 zoning on the east side isn't before the board tonight.
Yep.
Okay.
So we have so recognize we have a substitute motion for only the west side properties in consideration as referred to at the previous meeting. Any further discussion? All right,
So we're gonna leave partial 7336, 7222,
7336 and 723, I believe it's,
7222 and 7369, you're not gonna change them, that's everything on the east.
yes,
And then we're gonna change it, the three parcels to the west,
yes.
like we did in the previous meeting, that's the
That's the
substitute
substitute
motion.
motion, exactly as the previous motion, your previous substitute motion from the last meeting.
And that leaves the split zoning on the east side.
All right, all in favor of the substitute motion, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
No. The motion carries
4-1.
4-1 for just the properties on the west side. All right? Thank you. So, let's see, next item was informal comment period. At this time, we do set aside a 10-minute period for informal comments. Madam Speaker, do we have any to sign up?
We do not.
We do not have anyone to sign up for informal comments. Next item is the discussion adjustment of the consent agenda. Is there any adjustment or discussion? Having hearing none, all in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The consent agenda has been approved. Item number 10A, Casual Person County Line Survey. Sally Vaughn, Russell Jones.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
I'll let the folks exit. Come before you tonight with a request to approve the Casual Person County Line Survey, which was completed by the North Carolina Geodetic Survey with one minor change. For some background information, on May the 20th of 2024, this board voted to adopt a resolution authorizing the surveying of the Casual Person County line. And in June of 2024, Casual County adopted a similar motion in their jurisdiction. In September of 2025, the survey was completed by the North Carolina Geodetic Survey. Their plats, which we also call maps, were drawn, and a report was submitted to both counties for review. The overall change in county boundaries is fairly minimal, resulting in a 0.28 acre difference as reported in the final report, which is in your packet. Staff from both counties have performed a comprehensive review of these changes. We've had multiple meetings between counties and with the state of North Carolina. And as you all know, accurate boundary information is crucial to many aspects of county boundary or county operations, including accurate taxation, zoning, and emergency services. So I did prepare a relatively brief presentation, which I will go through, and then we can discuss a potential change to the recommendation that I have. So if I could instruct IT to put the PowerPoint, oh, they've already beat me to it. Great. All right, and do I have the ability to change slides? Fantastic. So just for basic reference, we are talking about this purple, basically straight purple line between Caswell and Person County. A timeline part of this, which I have gone over already, began in 1998, where Caswell County requested that this boundary be resurveyed. In 2001, Person County requested that this be resurveyed. In 2003, that survey was completed, but neither county chose to adopt the survey. Since that time, North Carolina General Statute has changed, such that if counties agree and request a survey, that you can no longer fail to adopt a survey. So what happens is you either adopt the survey, or within a year's time, the survey becomes automatically adopted. So that was a copy of the prior resolution for Person County. So again, in 2024, Caswell approved their resolution for a survey, as Person had done in May of 2024. The survey was completed in September of 25, and then September of 25 to present, staff from both counties have reviewed this. We've talked with Register of Deeds in both counties, tax departments, and GIS staff in both counties. Essentially, so these results are being presented to you tonight on December the 1st of 2025, and if approved, the boundary survey would go into effect immediately to help us align with the tax year. We'll get to that in a second. But after adoption of the surveyed boundary, the North Carolina Geodetic Survey will contact all property owners by mail, and they will set some additional monuments along that line. And then in February or March of 2026, these boundary changes will be reported to the U.S. Census Bureau. I mentioned monuments. I wanted to give you an idea of what these items look like. Essentially, the column of stone on the right is the North Carolina-Virginia Monument, and the two discs are some interceding points between the northern and southern reaches of this boundary line. And this is extremely exaggerated. That's why I put not representative of actual survey on here. But essentially what we're looking at is a slight bow in that purple line as represented by this yellow line. Again, this is incredibly exaggerated. This is not the actual survey. I don't want anyone to think that we're taking over portions of Hyco Lake that we're not actually taking. I wanted to give you an idea of what this looks like in detail. At the widest, the difference between the new surveyed line and the old surveyed line is about 70 feet. And that largest difference is is at Samora Road. The boundary mostly passes through agricultural areas. There will be some minor shifts along Cunningham, Canal Circle, Bunny Rabbit Road, Kelly Brewer Road, and Sunny Lane. And why is this important? So the county you're in determines your property tax rate. It determines your zoning, which is important because Caswell does not have zoning across this boundary line from us. It determines your school district. It determines EMS, law of fire, 911 response. It determines where you vote. It determines where you get your permits and things like that, and other local regulations. So it's a good idea to know exactly where your county boundaries are so you can administer these programs effectively. Statewide, I just had to throw this in. Every line that you see in red on this map of North Carolina is a state boundary that has not been surveyed. So frankly, we don't know where a lot of our boundary lines are, but we're going to fix this between Caswell and Person. So at this time, I will be happy to entertain any questions that the board may have about this. Yes, sir.
Did I see on one of those slides that the difference between the old survey and the new survey was 0.28 acres?
Yes, sir. And
Who
it's
paid for this survey?
the North Carolina Geodetic Survey paid for
Good,
this
it
survey.
didn't come out of our treasury.
No,
to
sir.
do that.
No, sir. Ultimately, it is
Praise
tax money.
Jesus for that.
Ultimately, it was tax money, but it was state levied taxes, not locally levied
Okay,
taxes.
thank
Correct.
you.
Yes. Any
So-
other questions from the board?
I went to an event at the Piedmont Conservation Council, and they had a little trivia wheel, and they asked me what year Person County was formed, and I said 1792, and they said, no, 1791.
1791.
And I didn't argue with them, but I want to say, look, there's a sign out on Main Street that says otherwise. But, so this is the first time I've seen
Correct.
it in your
Mhm.
report that said it was actually 1791, so you gotta tell Zach he needs to change the thing.
Well, they approved it, I don't know whether they actually created it.
It was approved in 71 to be created January 1 of 72, or 92, 1792, I believe is the way. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's,
But I saw that this was done before and didn't
Correct.
make it through the finish
Mhm.
line. Is there any doubt that Caswell County would not follow suit and do what we're doing tonight, and would that cause any?
that's a good question, and we have talked about what if one county approves it and the other one does not. So we've been in extensive conversations with Caswell County as recently as this morning. And so that's what I wanted to discuss with you all. When I wrote this agenda abstract, the recommendation was to approve this effective today, so it could be effective January 1st, 2026, to help align with the tax bill cycle. After some discussions with Caswell County, they're very lightly staffed, and they're not going to have the ability to do all of the all the work needed to implement this for calendar year 2026, tax year 26. So they have requested actually that we just allow this to become effective 1 year after it was submitted to us,
Which
to
is
allow
that
them
date?
the time to accommodate their work.
What is that date?
So we were, North Carolina Geodetic Survey gave us this information, the plats and all of that, on September the 12th of 2025. And so 1 year after that would be September the 12th of 2026, which would allow Caswell and Person a 2027 tax date to implement all of this, all these parcel changes, all of these 911 changes
So
that we're
they don't
looking
feel
at.
like they can make the change?
No, sir. No, sir. They have a half a GIS person and one guy in the tax department.
Okay, I understand.
So, but if we approve it and they don't, what happens?
So, it would basically wait, it would lie fallow until the 1 year is up, whether we approve it or, it'll either happen if we both approve it simultaneously, or if one does or does not approve it, then that 1 year time frame would be when it would become automatically approved, so. And that would allow, Caswell plenty of time, us plenty of time, to have things for the 2027 tax cycle.
Do you want a motion to
Yes,
table?
sir.
Yes, please.
We have a motion, it's, to approve it would be to approve the 2025 North Carolina Geo Survey Report, plats and surveyed boundary lines between Person County and Caswell County effective December 1st, 2025.
Would it be cleaner for us to table that motion, or is it gonna make a difference if we approve it or don't approve?
I think for record-keeping purposes, it's probably a better idea to have an approval. And I would actually suggest a substitute motion here, but to have an approval, on the docket in the public record that this did occur, or it can just be tabled and it can just automatically happen in September, whichever your
That's all I'm
preference
asking, how would we
is.
prefer to do it?
Yeah.
What's the cleanest way to do it?
What is your substitute motion?
The substitute motion would be to, in order to allow for full and effective implementation of this in both counties, to allow the survey to become effective on 9/12 of 26.
I make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a motion. Any further discussion? Having hearing none, all in favor, please vote of saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion's been approved. Thank you.
Thank you for all your work.
Item 10B, SIG Tax Appeal for Exemption, Russell Jones.
Sally made her issue seem very straightforward, so maybe I can do the same. CIG Barden Ridge has applied qualified to be exempt for property taxes for 2025. Just for your information, so Barden Ridge is the apartment complex on Barden Street. It was actually built in 2000, 48-unit apartment complex, and at the time it was built, this was called a Section 42 property, which was taxed, but it was taxed at a lower rate because you had to use the income approach, and some of the income was offset by some federal tax credits. So it kind of gives you a little bit of history. It sold June 2024 to a company called CIG Barden Ridge. And this company has attempted to copy a previous tax exemption that we refer to as the Blue Ridge housing case that was done in 2013, and it was approved, actually it was done in the Court of Appeals. So low-income housing under 105-278.6 does not specify what the rent rates should be. So that makes it kind of complicated when someone says we're going to provide low-income housing and we don't want to pay property taxes. So we had to reach out to the Housing and Finance group and say, what would you consider low-income housing? Because the statute doesn't describe it. And looking at the rents and looking at our market rents locally, we felt that it did not qualify for low-income rents. And that was using the calculations that the state gave us. The second thing that came up was 0.1% of the case that was approved in 2013 by the courts was owned by a nonprofit advisory group, and they were involved in the daily operations of the apartment complex. Well, this one was planning to do that, but we could not ever find that that community group was ever established. It was not registered Secretary of State. And there was no documentation to show that they actually even existed. A third thing that complicated was the application was under a different name than the current owner. Very similar name, but a Delaware corporation, not a North Carolina corporation. So since they did not qualify, the statute did not mention what low-income housing would be, but it appeared to be pretty much market rent. And the company that was supposed to be running it daily did not appear to exist. I had to reach out to the county attorney and comparing notes. We found that there are 14 of these also under appeal in Forsyth County. Exact same company, exact same issue. They're going to hear their case December 17th, and their board is indicating they're going to deny the application. And there's several also in Cumberland County in the same situation. So even though they attempted to set up exactly what had already been approved by the Court of Appeals in 2013, it seems they have failed to do so, and I think we should not exempt the property. We're talking about a $5 million property with a $70,000 tax bill. And I'm going to ask the county attorney to tell me what I left off, because there was a lot of paperwork involved in this.
No, it's very thorough. I always like when county staff bring me novel situations, and this is certainly one of them. And I think Mr. Jones described it really well. They've structured this in a way that was approved by the Court of Appeals, and essentially what you have is a very small ownership. It's held by a nonprofit, but if they have daily control, then some other things, and that can qualify them for tax exempt status. But as Mr. Jones pointed out, the difference there is, number one, the rent rates. But even if you said, well, that's a little subjective, it looks like they sort of got pretty far down the road of getting this set up, but we don't have everything set up as it should be in order for them to be operating this as they've represented. And I don't say that they've misrepresented anything, just that they're not there yet. So I agreed with Mr. Jones after taking a look at what's available in the Register of Deeds and at the Secretary of State's website. And we tried to lay it out as clearly as we could in his agenda item, but happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So if they got their paperwork together, they could do this again next year, and it would be much more.
So by having the board hear the case tonight, and I did reach out to the representative, they did not want to show, it does allow them to appeal to the state. And they are not certain if they'll appeal to the state, but yes, every January they have a chance to reapply and get whatever deficiencies we found in order. So it's not a one and done. It could be revisited next year and every year. And it also could go before the commission, Property Tax Commission in Raleigh, if within the next 30 days they could file a case, and they could likely put all the cases in one appeal and go from there.
What's the 30-second summary of this Mitchell County? case?
30-second summary. 2013, the Property Tax Commission said the county was right, it should not be exempt. The Court of Appeals said that 1/10% ownership ran and daily operated by the nonprofit was sufficient. The rents were not in question. The rents were very low on that one. If I recall, I never got the true rent rates from 2013, but they said that the rents were not in question. They were low enough that was not the issue. But just a 1/10 ownership, 1/10 of 1% ownership, but involving the daily operations was sufficient. We could not find that the company that was supposed to operate this one ever was created. And in the Forsyth County case, which doesn't really impact this one, they actually had a document that said if we're not created by October 1st, that offer would be taken off the table. And they could find that it was never put in place. And there was some that struggled with what, a testament of non-creation in the.
It was in
in
the
the
Forsyth County case, correct?
And that would, yes, the community
Yeah.
connections never did create theirs there.
Yeah, we didn't have that here, but what we didn't have was, and we've got it laid out, there's little things like there's no assumed name certificate. Also, and Russell sent me this wonderful flow chart that showed how the organizations for this company are set up. And in theory, there's supposed to be a Virginia corporation that gave title to this Delaware corporation, which currently holds it. And the nonprofit has an ownership stake in the Virginia corporation, but not the Delaware corporation. So it seems that while legally they could have structured this in such a way, again, I don't mean this is an insult to the applicant, it seems that they kind of tripped over their own shoestrings on this. And to your question, Ms. Wilburn, I think they could correct all these things. I can't speak to the rent rates, but the kind of legal organization are things they could fix in a future year.
Unfortunately, the rent rates are not in statute. It's a rental for low to moderate income. So I would hate to think that $1 less than market rent would be sufficient, but I don't know that we would be able to settle that here.
That was my next question, like, was there any or would there be any impact to the tenants there because things aren't defined and it seems like they're just all over the place with this?
Of course, tenants have the rental contracts, and then they're not terribly far off from what the state the Housing and Finance Committee would consider low rent. For example, the 3 bedrooms are renting for $12.24 on average, and the state recommended $11.24. So we don't talk about $100 a month on those. 2 bedrooms at $8.92, and instead they're charging $9.99. So it's very likely that we'll hear this case in future years when they correct some of the structure changes, corporation changes, but this year I don't think they qualify.
All right, what is the desire of the board?
Motion to deny the request.
We have a motion to deny. Any further discussion? Having here none. All in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion's been approved.
Thank you.
Item 10C, Strategic Plan Quarterly Report, County Manager.
Good evening. We are currently in the second fiscal year of this particular strategic plan. The board did amend the strategic plan prior to the fiscal year 27 budget, fiscal year 26 budget implementation. This report reports out on the strategic plan objectives as well as the budget objectives that are associated with each department for the first quarter of fiscal year 26. That's July through September of the current fiscal year. We utilize the same reporting format this time around as we had used last year. We had experimented with a couple of other options for reporting, utilizing a GIS tool or a Microsoft Project Manager, but neither one of those seemed to be as user-friendly for reporting purposes for departments to use and for actually sharing this information with the board and the public. So we stuck with the same reporting format this time around. So the report itself is included in your agenda packet, and I welcome any questions that you may have or feedback that you'd like to provide on the progress that has been made so far this fiscal year.
Any feedback and questions? All right. Thank you, County Manager.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, item 10D, Quasi Judicial Processes Training, County Attorney.
So we're going to do this fairly quickly. And speaking with staff, speaking with some of our commissioners, we thought it was a good idea to have some training on quasi-judicial procedure, because as you know, you'll have a special use permit hearing coming up in the next month or two. We're going to be talking a little bit about the process for that special use permit, which of course is the Hot Rock Haulers application. As this board knows, we're not going to talk about the substance of the application or merits or pros or cons, but I think there's some unusual circumstances, and so we thought it'd be good to have a little training now. That said, there's a lot of material in here. I have no intention of going through all of it tonight. A lot of this is for you to have for future reference, and also as questions come up. Of course, I'm here to answer any that you might have. All right, so let's just jump right into it. Let's see. There we go. All right, so overview tonight. We're going to talk about quasi-judicial conflicts of interest and the rule of necessity. We're also going to talk about standing and who has it. We're going to talk about how you conduct a quasi-judicial hearing. And we're going to talk about how you render a decision. If anytime you have questions, just let me know. Feel free to interrupt me. So you all have probably seen this slide before. Quasi-judicial decisions involve the application of ordinance policies to individual situations rather than the adoption of new policies. What that means is take, for example, tonight, you rezone some property. You change the zoning map. When you approve or deny a special use permit, you're not changing anything in the ordinance or on the zoning map. You're using the standards that are already there, and you're asking yourself, is there sufficient evidence to support approving a permit under these standards? They're like miniature court hearings, and the really important thing to know about that is that the applicant and parties of standing have due process rights you have to observe, and also your decision has to be based only on evidence that's in the record, that's substantial, competent, and material. This is the statute on conflicts of interest. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. I know we've talked about it before, but essentially one of the key parts of due process is that an applicant has a fair and unbiased decision maker. That means you can't have had your mind made up in advance. You can't have undisclosed ex parte communications. That means you've talked about the project in advance of the hearing and you haven't disclosed that. Also, you can't have a close familial or business or associational relationship with the applicant. That's a little different than when we talk about legislative decisions for rezonings or text amendments. But the thing to remember is that quasi-judicial decisions, the bar is lower for what counts as a conflict of interest. And one thing I want to pat this board on the back for is you all have done a great job of when you have concerns, you've talked with me in advance, so we're able to kind of figure out if that's a potential conflict or not. Okay, so this is a novel issue that we've had come up, and I know we've talked about it some before, but in this case for Hot Rock Haulers, we are going to have to invoke, and by we I mean you, the board, invoke what's called the rule of necessity. So we have 5 commissioners who will make this decision. 3 commissioners have already come forward and said that they have a conflict of interest and have been properly recused. Unfortunately, that doesn't leave a sufficient number of commissioners to consider the matter. We've looked at some other alternatives, but essentially you are the only board that can approve this request or deny this request. And so the rule of necessity essentially says that even if a disqualifying bias exists, the biased decision makers can still decide the case if they are the only authority empowered to make the decision. So this has been used in North Carolina in the judicial context where you have a court that's the only court that can hear a matter. It's not been used in the quasi-judicial context. So my hope is that we will not be making new law, but just so you know, there is a legal basis for this, and frankly, I think it's the only way really forward for the board, but it is unusual. So I wanted the board and the public to be aware of why the board is doing what it's doing. So standing, this may or may not become an issue, and the top line item I want to give for you is if a party has standing, they get to participate fully in the proceedings. So that means they get to cross-examine witnesses, they get to put on their own witness evidence and all that. If you do not have standing, you don't have all those due process rights. However, you can still present testimony. So this is a neighbor or a citizen who wants to speak in favor or against the project, and maybe they have factual information because they live nearby or something like that. They can always speak, but they can't cross-examine the applicant's witnesses and things like that. What I always tell my boards is that you should determine if there are other parties besides the applicant. The applicant always has standing. You should make that determination at the beginning of the hearing. You don't want to get halfway through a hearing. I've seen that happen before, and someone come forward and say, well, we think we have standing. And if someone thinks they have standing, this board should go through a process of making that determination. And we'll talk about the standard for that in a minute. There are rules if you have an association that wants to have standing. We can talk about that if that comes forward. But really, the main thing to remember is that, and this is one of those slides we're going to skip, but if you have someone who is not the applicant and who's not a property owner that's going to be affected by the permit, or someone with a property interest, and they're also not the county, then they're what we call third party seeking standing. And they don't automatically have standing. Instead, they would have to show special damages. That doesn't mean they have to prove it to the letter of the law, but they have to at least make sufficient allegations that they've got that. Special damages means that the party would suffer special damage distinct from the rest of the community, amounting to a reduction in property value. So a lot of times they talk about traffic, property values, and dust and noise and things like that. And they can either present that through affidavits, or really what they need is live testimony from the person. And then the board would hear that evidence, and with my guidance, you'd make a determination about whether someone has standing. So if that comes up during the Hot Rock Haulers hearing, we will cross that bridge when we come to it. All right. We can talk a little bit more about that if it comes up. So this is the next most important part. So for special use permits, when we talk about the standards you've got to make a decision on, there are 4 criteria in Person County's ordinance. The first is that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan is submitted and approved. The second is that the use meets all required conditions and specifications. And generally, this would be staff telling you, it meets the requirements of the ordinance. But as we're going to see, you are the decision maker, and if you have questions about any of the standards or about the evidence presented, you should always feel empowered to ask questions until you feel like there's enough evidence in the record to make a decision. The third standard is the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity. And that second part would be its infrastructure, or it's some sort of other thing that we're not really concerned about the property value. It's necessary for the operation, for the public well-being. And the fourth is that the location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is located and in general conformity with the comprehensive plan. So we'll talk about this in a moment when you reach a decision, the decision area. But what's important is you'll see the applicant has the burden of presenting enough evidence to show those 4 standards have been met. And if they make what we call a prima facie case, which means they put on enough evidence, then they are presumed to be entitled to the permit. And the only reason the board could deny the permit is if then there's evidence put on that's not sufficient or evidence that's put on that shows that they haven't met it, essentially opposition evidence. And this prima facie entitlement is really important. I've seen cases before, and I've won cases before, where someone who's seeking a special use permit stands up and says, we think it'll be a great project. And they then sit down and I say, members of the board, they haven't met their standard. They haven't put on any expert testimony. And I've seen permits denied for that. So this is important. And if necessary, we can talk about what's sufficient. But remember, once they've crossed that threshold, then they're entitled to the permit. Okay, so let's very quickly talk about evidence and testimony. We're going to skip this slide. We pretty much already covered it. The big things to remember are there's 3 words: competent, material, substantial evidence. Competent is the person's qualified to talk about it. So generally, if you're a fact witness, you've seen it with your own eyes, you can testify to it. But the only people who can provide opinion testimony are experts, and they have to be qualified as such. Material is it's relevant. What's happening in Caswell County or Durham County isn't relevant. It has to be relevant to this project. And substantial is kind of squishy, but it's that which a reasonable mind would regard as sufficient to support the result. You feel like it's enough. We've talked about the difference between lay and expert testimony. This may become more important, but just remember, only experts can provide opinion testimony. There are a few kinds of evidence that only experts by North Carolina state law can give opinion testimony. And those are property values, got to be given by an appraiser or a qualified realtor, or real estate expert, traffic engineering, particularly when you're talking about capacity of roads and safety of roads. And then the statute says other matters about which only expert testimony would generally be admissible in the rules of evidence. I can walk you all through that if that becomes an issue. Let's see here. So sometimes we talk about hearsay. We don't strictly follow the rules of evidence that you use in courts in a quasi-judicial proceeding, but generally you want to avoid hearsay, which is secondhand evidence. That would be me saying, well, I heard so-and-so say this. What you really need is so-and-so to come in and present that testimony. You can't allow some hearsay in a quasi-judicial proceeding, but your critical findings of fact, the reason you're making the decision, that can't be based on hearsay. All right. So we've talked about this burden shifting and about rebuttal evidence. The main thing is if they present enough evidence, then they're entitled to the permit unless there's evidence in opposition that shows they're not entitled to it. So these are evidence, or slides we're just gonna skip. They're really just for your reference in the future. This is really important, and I always tell my boards, you do not have to be Matlock to examine the witness. I'm getting old enough that that's gonna start dating me and people are gonna say, who? I'm gonna say Andy Griffin, they're gonna say, who? But for right now, it still applies. And the main thing to remember is that you're the decider, you're who determines the facts, and if you feel like there's not enough evidence in the record, keep asking questions. You could even continue the hearing if you felt like you needed to say, hey, could we get more evidence on ABC? That's really up to you all. Once that hearing has been closed, you can't let more evidence in unless you want to go through the whole notice process over. So really make sure you do it up front. Okay, we see this in different levels of complexity depending on the permit. And sometimes when you render a decision, the board just votes, do they meet the standards, and that can be okay. What North Carolina law says is that you have to make findings of fact and conclusions of law. It has to be a written decision. So we will talk about that more at the appropriate time, but just understand that you need to be thinking about the evidence. If there's conflicting evidence, it's going to be your job to weigh that. All right, so that was my presentation. I intended to keep it short, but we felt like what's going to be coming before you is complex enough that some training now would be helpful. Are there any questions from the board at this time? If not, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Chairman's report. I do not have a report this time. County Manager?
No report.
No report. Vice Chairwoman Wilburn?
Well, I want to say thank you to everybody for having the confidence in me to put me in this seat, and also point out that this is the 1-year mark for Commissioner Royster and I tonight. This is the 1-year meeting from when we were sworn in and took office. So I did want to take a moment to reflect on the work that we've accomplished that I'm most proud of. One of the earliest votes we had was to approve the zoning request for Duke Energy that would allow them to move forward with construction plans for their new hydrogen-capable facility on their existing property. That was back in February. That action required 3 votes to pass, and we only had 3 votes. So I'm proud to have been one of the 3 to approve that. Their tax value in the county increased by more than $90 million over last year's, which equates to $568,000 in tax revenue. And that brings Duke's total tax revenue to more than $6.6 million. That's not their value, that's their tax revenue. So that $6.6 million funds can fund quite a few departments to provide services for citizens. In addition to that, there's 2 contractors that are directly supporting Duke Energy that are in the top 25 taxpayers that bring an additional $194,645 in tax revenue. We also supported Duke's application to the Utilities Commission for construction of a second new facility, which was recently approved by the Utilities Commission. Probably ranking highest after that for me was our participation in the first Leadership Summit. That was a joint meeting of the city and county and the EDC. And that was so well received and productive that we have a target date for our second one of January 29th at 4 p.m. to do a housing summit. So please mark your calendars for that. Other items include working with our extremely capable interim planning director that we had to get our planning ordinance cleaned up, and our current director is continuing in that work. And we were able to eliminate the confusion that we were in for a couple of years there, being in limbo. We updated our org chart to reflect voters at the top, and we updated our strategic plan to emphasize a focus on economic development. We adjusted our EDC membership to make the farmland preservation seat a voting position to ensure that our agriculture community is part of our economic development strategy. and we made other changes to support a more proactive approach to business and industry support and recruitment, as well as product development. Through the Regional Transportation Planning Organization, we established a regional focus group to revisit improvements to US 158. And even though we had our overall tax values to increase due to the reappraisal, we did lower the tax rate by 10 cents. And from my perspective, all the enhanced focus on economic development and supporting industries like Duke Energy are meant to continue to relieve the burden of the individual taxpayer, of which I also am one, by the way. And so one vote doesn't move needles, so I want to thank the full board for how we've been able to work together on these accomplishments for Person County. And with this being the only meeting we have for December, I want to wish everyone happy holidays. Thank you.
Commissioner Thomas?
No report.
Commissioner Royster?
Commissioner Wilburn said some things I was going to say, that this is our 1-year anniversary, and it's been a year. But I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving, and I just appreciate this past year, the opportunities of this board being able to represent Person County on a national level, and talking with our leaders in Washington, and just really being able to connect more with the community in a different sense, and just being out just these past couple of weeks, seeing how people in Person County have come together to help those in need. You all know I'm a social worker at heart, so you're going to hear this all the time from me about the community. But just being out and randomly seeing people, helping those in need, just pulling together, no matter, what your beliefs are, anything like that, just making sure we're all doing well in this community. And I think outside of just those of us living in Person County, but as leaders, I've said this before, that's our hope, that we continue to work together to do what's best for our residents and our folk here in this community, and make sure everybody have the things that they need. So I just hope that the decisions we make will focus on those things. But again, I just wish everyone happy holidays, Merry Christmas, since we will not be here anymore for this month.
Thank you. Commissioner Long?
I attended a couple of ribbon cuttings at Burrow Coffee and at Allison's Design. Also attended the Rescue Squad annual ham and egg breakfast and the stew at Timberlake Fire Department. And I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to go into closed session number 1 per General Statute 143-318.11A5 to establish or to instruct the public body, staff, or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price or and other material terms of a contract or proposed counteroffer for acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease, or the amount of compensation and other material terms of an employment contract or proposed employment contract with the following individuals permitted to attend: County Manager Catherine Cathy, Clerk to the Board Michelle Solomon, County Attorney T.C. Morphus Jr., and Economic Development Director Brandy Lynch, followed by closed session number 2. Closed session number 2, General Statute 143-318.1A3 for the purpose to consult with the county attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege with the following individuals permitted to attend: County Manager Catherine Cathy, Clerk to the Board Michelle Solomon, County Attorney T.C. Morphus Jr., and Assistant County Manager Human Services Director Brian Hart. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
All in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. We're now in closed session. now in open session. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All right. All in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Meeting's adjourned.